Hey, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming tonight. I know it's not fun to do trainings in the evenings, but the positive thing is that you're going to get PGI for this, so a lot of hard work. So welcome to the Enrich IEP training. It's our software program that we use in DCSD. We always use Google Chrome as our browser because that's the best for this program. Internet Explorer is no longer supported by Enrich, so I just want to let you know about that. And so I am Jennifer Templeton. I am a special ed coordinator for charter schools, and I'm also the District 504 coordinator. And then tonight we have Rebecca Scheidinger, which is our new IEP support specialist, so she'll be doing these trainings after this one from now on. So she's the person that you'll email if you have any questions or any issues regarding the IEP software or questions with IEPs. And then we're lucky also to have Kim Bertha, who is our special ed coordinator for Parker Elementary Schools. Ooh, I'm the charter. All right, so welcome. So tonight's training is going to be a lot like I do, you do, or I do, we do together. We're going to probably get through, among all three classes, we're going to do 2 in-class assignments, and you'll be doing 2 out-of-class assignments in order to get the PGI credit. So for our goals for training is making sure that you can log in and get access, and I think everybody has been able to get in, so that's a good thing. We've already accomplished one goal. We're going to understand the dashboard, the teacher dashboard today. We're also going to understand how to find students, understanding how the groups work, and understanding the students' profiles. We're going to be going through a full annual, a reeval, and a transfer. We're also going to go through amending an IEP, also through the 7-step initial process. We're going to understand about ad hoc and ad action items, exiting students from special education, monitoring versus reporting, and we're going to review and go over all the work products that you need to accomplish by the end of the course to receive your PGI. So all of you got the backward plan because Rebecca shared that with you in an email today. So that's what we used before when we logged in and we made a copy of our summative assessment. And that's also where you got the formative assessment, that Google form that I asked all of you to fill out. And again, the browser is Google Chrome. So I've had everybody already go in the Google form and do their formative assessment. And everybody should have gotten a copy of your summative assessment. And you also made an electronic copy of it as well. How I check your homework and how Rebecca will be checking your homework is through the electronic copy. I gave you a paper copy because we're going to use all those dates. Everything in Enrich is very date specific. And so therefore, I thought it'd be easier to have it right by your fingertips instead of going tab to tab like I do. I'm a really tech-savvy person. I like using just technology and not any paper forms, but I know not everybody's like me, and so I thought I would give you that extra support if you needed it. So the development site that we all signed into tonight, the way you find the difference between them is, if you notice in the web address, it's IEP DEV. And it also has that orange bar. So be careful and don't feel bad if this happens to you. But we've had some people go into the real production PROD and start doing their homework, and then they freak out because they've been doing it on a real kit in the real site. No problems. Just email Rebecca or me and say, yikes, I didn't mean to go into the production site. I was trying to do my homework in the dev site. So always check to make sure you're in the dev site first when you're doing your homework and your training and your practice. That is open all the time. So even beyond this course, if you want to try something out, or you don't know how a form looks, or you don't know how it's going to interact with what you're doing, you can always use that training site for anything that you do. So we also have quite a bit of resource available at your fingertips. The manuals are huge. We were the first district to have manuals, and a lot of districts have kind of tried to borrow a lot of the things that we've done. If you look at each one of these manuals, it is a step-by-step process on the manual. So we created these so that you wouldn't even really have to sit in this training. You could actually go through every one of those manuals and be trained. So just as a resource, if I get too fast tonight or something doesn't jive with you, you can always go back to these manuals. There's several ways that we can go. Of course, they're embedded. The links are embedded here in the presentation. We also have them where Rebecca just shared with you the special ed Google site. So if you click on the special education Google site and you go off to the left where it says Enrich IEP, and it will load. Just taking a little bit of time here. Probably because I have too much going on here on all my sharing. That's what it was. So if you're on the Enrich IEP site, if you scroll down, you'll see all the manuals right here. It says training, presentation, and manuals. This is probably where we're also going to post the video of tonight, so if you ever need to go back. But here are all the manuals. There's the program basics. That's pretty much what we'll go through tonight. All of the information about the Enrich initial IEP, reeval, the 3 to 5, 6 to 14 school age IEP, and the 15 plus IEP for students that are 15 years or older in their school year, in their age. So those are all the manuals, so you're welcome to go through each one of them. We'll be using some of those tonight as well. So I'd like everybody to come with me to open up your tab of the Enrich when you're signing into the Enrich Enrich site, the dev site. So everybody should have that big orange bar. So if you don't mind just signing in right now, we're going to talk about the dashboard. Sometimes one of the things that you need to know about Google Chrome, its little pitfall, is that it saves bad errors. So if you have been denied access, it'll save the bad error, and you'd actually have to clear your browser. So clearing your browser history, just so you know, I thought I would go over that since that just came up, is anytime you're in Google Chrome, do you see these 3 lines up at the right-hand corner, way up in the top? I don't know if you could see it on mine. Might have to go Control minus so you can see. Can you see all the way up there? I don't know if you could see me pointing. Do you see my arrows way up in the top of Chrome? If you click on there, it'll bring up a menu, and the menu will give you history. You can either get there by history or you can get there through tools. Either one. If you click on history, it'll say clear browsing data, and you always want to clear the browsing data from the beginning of time. Don't do it now because we don't want it to clear right now, but I suggest that we do that at least once a month because of the technology that we use. Okay? All right. So everybody's in their dev sites right now, and if you notice on your dashboard, yours looks very different from mine. Mine is at administrator level and yours is at teacher level. So I'm going to go to our resource manual, which has our pictures, and we'll walk you through understanding the dashboard. So I'm going to go to our Enrich Basics resource manual, and then you're going to be able to see all of this nice screenshots and support there for you. So this is what the manual looks like. So we already know how to log in, so let's go to understanding the teacher dashboard. That looks more familiar, doesn't it? Okay, so on your dashboard, you'll have a to-do grid, and in the to-do grid, that is basically your deadlines of when your plans and actions are due. And so if you have some numbers there, that means that your name has been added to a student's programs tab. The only way for the deadlines to pop up is if your name is attached to that student in program. So if you don't have any numbers there, that are showing any overdue or when they're due, it's because your name hasn't been added to any student's programs tab. We're going to be working on that. And most likely in the dev site, you probably won't have any. But if you go to look at your production site, you might have already added your name to a programs tab and you'll see those deadlines, okay? Meetings, off to the right, any meeting that you've been scheduled to, which means that your name is on the notice of meeting, then your meeting will be listed there in the meeting section. So you'll always know when you first sign into Enrich if you have a meeting to go to. Services are the services in which you're providing. And that's where we're doing the assigned providers, when you can assign yourself for providing those services on the IEP. And then on the left-hand side, we have student groups. Now, the cool thing about student groups, it's a really fast way to find your caseload, or a group that you're working with, like a reading group or a math group. And the great upgrade that we just got with 10.0, once you open up a student within your group, all of the students in your group will be up on the top of that one student's page, so you can toggle between kids very fast. So it's a really advantage to set up a group, and we're going to do that tonight as well. Of course, my classes is if you are a teacher of record in IC for a class, your classes will show up there. And then if you click on them, you'll actually see every student that's in the class. And then reports, you can run reports through Enrich. You can find out how many students with autism are in your school, how many have a behavior intervention plan, how many of them need transportation, what's my caseload, what are my due dates, how many services am I providing, if I am a speech language, if I'm mental health. I want to run a report and find all of the students that are receiving mental health services so I don't miss any. Those are through reports, and we're going to learn how to do those. Any questions about the teacher dashboard? We good? Awesome.
Transportation log.
Transportation logs we don't use in our district. Good question. All right, next. So if you're doing progress monitoring, you'll also have a to-do grid if you're doing probes that are due, and they'll remind you when those probes are due. So I just wanted to point out the progress monitoring. All right, next one. Sorry. All right, so we're going to go into finding students. So let's go all together. I do, we do. If you notice on the top right-hand corner where you say here, search, if you search for a student, and you can search for any student, you can search for J-A-P-O, P-O, okay? When I just start searching for students with J-A-P-O, the reason why I want to use a couple of letters is because sometimes you don't know how the spellings of the students' names are, and if you try to spell the whole thing out and it says user not or student not found, then you think, oh, they're not in here. So I always recommend using a first couple of their first name and a first couple of their last name so you can find students. But when I'm searching, you've got a couple of search options. You can search in that way, and you can see all the JAPOs that I have. If I click here where it says view all student results, of course I have access to the entire district. So it's going to give me every JAPO. One of the things that I want to point out is, what do you see different about Jacob Ponder? He's got like a little purple orb next to his name, right? So when I do view student results, that is where that student with the purple orb are the student in special education. So that's how you can identify them right away. I can also go, if I do JAPO, I can do this button right here where it's called more search options. And I can search by last name, first name, I can search by school, I can search by grade, I can even search by student ID number. So there's a lot of different ways that you can find some students, okay? So I'm going to go back to JAPO, and I'm going to try and pull up Jacob. Now Jacob has 5 tabs. He's got a profile tab, a test scores tab, transcript, files, programs. If I were going to go back to JAPO and pull up, the one thing I want to show you is what else comes up to by Jacob's name when I'm searching. He's got the word programs next to his name, which also indicates that he is a student on an IEP. So that's another way you can find out really quickly. If I clicked on this Jacob Mark Ponder, I notice he only has 3 tabs. 3 tabs is a student that is not in special education. Okay? So I'm going to go back. Now I want to show you this. Do you notice here where I have my home, my search results, advanced search, Jacob. It's called breadcrumbs. Little Hansel and Gretel going on. It's telling you where you've been, and so you can always go back to where you were. It's really a nice feature. So like, oh, what student was I working on before? You can always look at your breadcrumbs there. So I'm going to go back to Jacob Brian Ponder, and we're going to take a look at these tabs and say, what are these tabs? So the profile tab is basically going to give you his name, his grade, where school he goes to, his ID number, date of birth, all his demographics. You always want to make sure that you have current enrollment. Now, you take a look at this student, and he has an end date of 4/30. He's not currently enrolled. If he had present, then I would know he's a current student. Okay? So you just want to look for enrollment data for schools and grade level. And then you also want to see that he's got all of these demographics. You can always look at those as well. Test scores. If I go to the test scores tab, I can add a new test. I'm going to pick a different student here because I'm not getting all of the great pretty stuff that I usually see. All right. Oh, they didn't put our input in. Trying to find, I'll go back to Jacob. So typically when I click on the test scores tab, you'll see the TCAP scores in there. I think it's because it's our development site, so I don't think they bothered to import our TCAP scores in for our training, but that's where you'll see our TCAP. You'll also see any assessments that we've done for a reeval or on initial, if it was put in the diagnostic library. This is what we call the diagnostic library. It's where we hold a lot of our tests, okay? So it's a quick way to take a look at your tests. Then if we go to the transcript, this will typically be their current schedule. So it's nice when you're scheduling an IEP meeting and you want to be able to schedule that meeting whenever the student is out or has time so they can be in the meeting. And then you can pull up the schedule and see what gen ed teacher you want to invite. It's all in one place instead of having to go to IC. It's right there. Okay? Files. The Files tab is where any attachment has been uploaded and any document that's been created for that student. So if you notice on the top bar, it says attachment. These are signature pages that have been attached. Has anybody had to attach a signature page so far this year? Okay, so some people have already had to do that. And basically when you print off that signature page and everybody signs it, you go to your copy machine at your school, you scan it in, it sends you an email. You open that email, you save that to your desktop somewhere, and then you can come to this Files tab, and where it says Upload Attachment, you need to upload that signature page. And then you actually relate it to something. So if I were to click on Upload Attachment, and it wants me to choose a file, and I choose a file on my desktop, I have to label it, I have to label it something, and I have to relate it to something that is in process, like obviously the IEP meeting, okay? So you have to label it, choose it, label it, and relate it. Now these documents here are all the documents that have been created within the Enrich program. So you can see what's already been created. And if you wanted to print all of them at one time, you can click on this button called Batch Print and download documents. So you can download everything. You could do all documents. You could do everything. You can choose everything. You can choose just the latest finalized. and then you can either print all of them or download them all. So it's a really nice, fast, and easy way. I had a teacher I was training, and he said, I'm a new teacher to this district. I walked in to take a look at what I had, and I had no files on these kids. No one had ever bothered to print anything off for him. He's like, how can I get all these files built? I'm like, oh, you probably want this batch print to get everything that you want on them. It was scary because you're supposed to keep the copy, the hard copy of the signature page in the working file. So it was kind of scary that he had no file. And then we go to the Programs tab. And the Programs tab is where the IEP is. So in the information, you'll see the student's disability in gray, and you'll see the current IEP. Those are the only items that will actually sit on the Programs tab. Okay? So far, so good? Everybody understands the 5 tabs. Question? You're not going to be mic'd out loud. It's just for our recording.
Oh, okay. I had a question about uploading, attaching a file. You can also do it when you have the IEP open and on the bottom left, right?
You're right. Yeah, I was going to show you that one with the IEP. So there's 2 places to upload.
But you can do it both places. And then
right.
Secondly, on when you made a comment about the working files,
yeah,
and needing to make sure that the signature page is in there, does all those files need to have a current IEP in them as well?
Yes.
Or is it just by school? Because
no, you want the last printed IEP in there, and there should be several IEPs in that file. Absolutely. Good question. Question? Same question as her stuff. Yeah, keep the last current IEP in there and keep it in. So you can upload from within the document itself or from the files attachment, either side. So we talked about understanding the student profile. Now we're going to create a student group. So if you take a look at your summative assessment, it's one of the things that we're going to accomplish is creating a group. So I'm going to go to a summative assessment. I'm going to pull one up so you can see that's one of the first things that we're going to be doing for some of our in-class assignments. So getting started, you're going to create a group. Do you see where it says in-class activities? And it's also on your paper document as well. We're going to create a group, name it Practice IEPs. Now, everybody has different summative assessments, so take a look at your summative assessment. Moderate needs teachers, SED teachers, we have to put in, find a student that is in special ed, so you need to find 1 special ed student, and we're going to go through that. And then you're going to find 3 that are not, meaning they have 3 tabs. For an ECE teacher, you have a different, and mental health, you have different qualifications of what you want to do. So let's go through. You go with me. I'm going to go back to my teacher dashboard. Hopefully everybody's on their dashboard. Everybody on their dashboard? Okay. So we're going to go to, does anybody remember where student groups is? Bottom left-hand corner. Great. So you're going to go down, scroll all the way down to, mine's on my right-hand corner. So do you see where it says student groups? You're going to click on create new group. Okay? And we're going to name it Practice IEPs. And then we're going to click next. So everybody should be on the same page I am. Everybody good? That's what it should show up once you say next. Yep. Yes. Yes, over there. Everybody good? Okay. It's hard to do it this way. All right, so now you notice this is View Students. You can rename this group. You can delete the group. You can add students this way. So you can add students this way. Or you can search for a student and add them to your group. So you can do it either way that you'd like to. I'm going to do it by searching because I don't know which student is in special ed and which is not. So I'm going to go up to my search bar and I'm just going to find a random student like you are. I'm going to do HE. All right, I'm going to pull up Kelsey. And I know she is 3 tabs, so I know she's not in special education. I'm a modern needs teacher. I need 3 of these kind of kids. I need 3 kids that have only 3 tabs. So right on the top of her profile, do you see where it says add to group? Right there? So if I click on add to group and I click select one, I'm going to select practice IEPs, and then I just click on add. So now she's in my practice IEP group, which I have a couple practice IEP groups apparently. Okay, now I'm going to do that again. I'm going to try and find another random student. And I'm going to click on add to group. Okay, and I want you to do that for as many as that you need. If you're a moderate needs teacher, you need 3 students with 3 tabs and 1 student with 5 tabs. Okay, I'm going to find another student with 5 tabs or no. Just random kids. Because these will be your practice IEPs. And now I have added all my students. Once you've added all your students to your practice IEP group, I'd like you to go back to that copy of the summative assessment that you copied with your name on it, okay? And on this summative assessment that you copied, you're going to put the name for the reevaluation for modern needs teachers, and also for, I think, ECE and mental health. You're all doing a reeval with me. So where it says in-class reevaluation student name, I want you to put the student's name that you had 5, that one student that had 5 tabs. It's already in SPED. Put their name in school. This is how Rebecca and I will know to check that student for your homework, okay? So you're going to go back to your summative assessment that you made a copy of. You can either write it on your paper version and do it later, or you can do it now, but put their name in, the student with the 5 tabs, and for the other ones that you had to save, which is the transfers and the initials, those are all the students with 3 tabs. Those are non-SPED because you need them to be non-SPED to do an initial, and you also need them to be non-SPED to do a transfer. Okay, so you're going to fill in all those names and schools of the ones that you just added into your practice IEP. Okay, so while we're finished waiting for everybody else to get all their names in, I'd like you to click on the student that is in special ed, the 5 tabs student in the development site. Let's open up. We're going to actually work through them in the development site. So do you remember when we were talking about the dashboard and how all of those numbers came in for deadlines? What we're going to do is we're going to add our name to the team member list so that this student will show up as due on our deadlines. And we're also going to practice how we're going to assign primary service providers. So I'm going to open one of my students that is in special ed. Pull him up. Hopefully he's still here. Might be gone. Okay. And I want you to scroll all the way down to the bottom where it says Manage Team. Do you see that? Very bottom gray area where it says Manage Team. Am I good to go forward, or should I wait a little bit longer for summative assessment people?
Yeah, I don't have that.
It might mean add team. So the student have 5 tabs? Yeah. Okay, and on the bottom, what does it say? Manage team? Add team? It's got to be on the Programs tab? Programs tab, sorry, Programs tab.
I should know this.
It's no, hey, this is what this training's for. Programs tab, right? Okay, so when we're on our Programs tab, we're going to click on Add Team Member or Manage Team, whichever one you have. And you're going to click on Manage Team. And then you're going to add your name. You can either add your name as the team lead. Now let me explain what these things are. So a team lead is the case manager. It's not the lead of your school. That's your team leader. It's you, the case manager. Okay? That's what a team lead is. So if, what's that? So I don't like, Shelly's listed as a team lead, but I want to be the team lead, so I'm going to delete her, and I'm going to put my name in there. And I'd like you to put your name there. Okay? And you can add me if you want. I'm going to add Rebecca, or you can add me, or Rebecca, or Kim, or anybody to that list. Once you add another person, you notice that all of a sudden a role pops up, and that's when you can assign them a role. So I'm going to put her as representative. Okay? Now this is brand spanking new. You're the first training group that I've had to see that now we have, with 10.0 update, we now have a primary service provider designation right here. It used to be embedded in the IEP and it was painful, let me just tell you. So right here you can already indicate who the primary service provider is. Does anybody know what that person should be? How do you know who's the primary service provider? Well, it depends. All right, if I have a student, right, it depends on their disability. So if I have a student that's DHH, deaf of hard of hearing, am I going to put myself down as the learning specialist? No. I'm the team lead. I might case manage that kid because our DHH teachers are itinerant and they don't case manage a lot of kids unless they're at a center-based school. But they have to be the primary service provider because I am not licensed to provide DHH services, and that's that student's primary disability. Therefore, it must match their primary service provider. All right, what about a student with autism? Who can be his primary service provider for them? Question? It could be an SSN teacher or moderate needs teacher. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I'm repeating what they say, so I think we're all good. Yeah. So what about a student that is SED? Who's their case manager? Serious emotional disability? Can it be a school psych? No. Cannot be a school, it could not be a school psych. Could it be a social worker? No. School social workers or psychologists are never primary service providers, never. So that SED student, it's either an SED teacher or it's the moderate needs teacher, okay? So it's all based on their primary service provider. Can an OT be a primary service provider? No. Even if the student is other health impaired, still a moderate needs teacher.
Because those services can't stand by themselves.
Right, can't stand by themselves. Excellent, good job. OT services cannot stand by themselves. All right, here's the tricky one. Speech language impairment with a secondary of SLD. Who's the primary? SLD. Primary is SLI. Speech language impairment. Secondary is SLD. Who's the primary? Speech language. Yes, indeedy. Doesn't matter what the secondary is, it's always about the primary. So a speech language pathologist can only be the case manager and can only be the primary for speech language impairment primaries only. Now, what if that student with autism has a secondary speech language? Doesn't matter, right? It's always based on the primary, okay? So this is where we get our October counts, and most likely, not most likely, but for sure, our December counts. This is where we get our funding. So if we have those primary service providers incorrect, we don't get funded for that student. So it's very imperative that we're picking the correct primary service provider, okay? So I'm going to hit cancel because I forgot what this student's primary service provider is. I want to take a look. So if you don't know, you come up to that gray tab and you take a look. This student is SLD. So therefore, it would be a moderate needs teacher, so I can be the primary. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to manage team because I didn't save what I did, which was foolish of me. So I'm going to go back and add myself as the team lead because I'm the case manager for this kid. I want to add Rebecca. And then I'm going to add myself. Now notice, I only had 2 choices there. Why do you think? There's only 2 people on the team. So in order to add that person as a primary, you got to make sure that they're a team member first. And then you can choose from who's the primaries. Make sense? Yes? No? But for this training site, it really doesn't matter. But I just want to make sure you understand that for production. Good? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pick a primary service provider. You can add anybody's name if you want. And I'm going to hit save. So now on the Programs tab, I'm listed as the team leader and the primary. And then I have Rebecca. So when you're back in your buildings in your real production site, go to your students, go to your caseload, make sure that team is uploaded up to date with all your team members. Now, the reason why I say that is because if you have all your team members on the bottom Programs tab, when you go to create the notice of meeting, they're already going to automatically populate, saving you tons of time. So go ahead and put them in. What's an advantage of having your whole team on the Programs tab besides the notice of meeting? What do you think would be advantageous? Wouldn't you want your psych and social to know when the meeting's coming up or when the re-eval's coming up? So by adding them to the Programs tab, that deadline will pop up. And it'll say, hey, oh gosh, I got Johnny's meeting. It's coming up. The re-eval's coming up in October. I better get ready for it. Okay? Rebecca?
So every participant or team member that you add here, it will then show up on their dashboard.
It'll show up on their dashboard. Good point. So I've added that student. Now their dashboard, when my psychologist signs in, and if I've added her to all my students, they will show up on her dashboard when she signs in. Question?
How about the specialized instruction directed, indirect?
We're going to talk about that. That's assigning providers. Okay. I was just going to go to that next. Yes, I'm going to go to that next. Question?
So on the management team, it's not just the people that provide services, it's the people that will be at her IEP meeting that are involved with her. Can you repeat that?
Yes, you want your team members. So the question was,
so in managed team, it's not just the people that provide services, it's also the people that will be at the annual IEP or whatever.
I would say it's mostly the people that provide services, but other people that might be involved in the notice of meeting that you want. I've seen a lot of people put their principals on there, or their assistant principals, or their gen ed teachers. It doesn't matter. Gen ed's not signing into Enrich, so they would never see it. They don't have a dashboard. Administrators do. They can sign into Enrich, so they would see that. So that wouldn't hurt to have them on there. Rebecca?
But it wouldn't automatically make them a mandatory participant.
That's right. This is not the notice of meeting. This is just, hey, I'm putting this on there because it will automatically populate and you choose them for those meetings. Question?
Who is the person that can add other people to the IEP? Is it the team leader or primary care provider?
Anybody can add to that Programs tab.
Okay.
Anybody can add to that Programs tab.
Can
Notice
add
of
any
meeting.
person.
What's that?
Any person to the IEP.
Yes.
Okay.
But notice of meeting is usually controlled, the actual IEP creation is controlled by the case manager. But anybody can go in. So an OT can go in and assign herself to anybody's program tab, or an SLP or DHH. Anybody can go in to whatever access they have for schools and add themselves. You don't have to do it yourself, but you can add yourself. You can have other people do it. And that was the beginning of the year task that we asked everybody to do, is add yourself as a team member on programs so that you can get those deadlines pop it up. Okay? Any other questions about the managed team piece? All right, so for December count, primary service provider is important, but also in December count, we count what services we're providing, and those are called secondary services. So if we go to the student's IEP, and I'm sorry, what was your name that asked the question? Donna. Donna asked a great question. She said, what about the ones that are showing up for services, like the speech language services and the specialized instruction, and those people? How do we get them? You notice it says no providers, no providers. Well, right now, if this went to December count, we would not get money for that student because no providers have been assigned, right? So let's go through and assign these providers. So if we click on the blue line that says what service it is, where it says edit providers, do you see that blue line there? It says edit providers. Go ahead and click on edit providers. And what's going to come up is a list of every person that's licensed in our district to provide that service. So I picked on speech language. So who's licensed to give speech language? Only SLPs. So you're going to get a list of all the SLPs in our district. Okay? And you can choose an SLP. For mine, it was SLP, so I would just pick, I'm going to pick Alicia. And then this is the tricky part. Once you find a name, this is one thing that people were having problems with when we went to 10.0, because this is brand new, so you're learning this before they do, is if I click save, it does nothing. I actually have to click add first, okay? So I picked her name, and now I want to click on add. And now you can see her name's popping up, and now I click save. And now if I go back to my programs tab, click on programs again, you'll notice that Alicia has been assigned to provide those services. You see that? So go ahead and assign at least one service, or maybe do it twice just so you can get the hang of it, of assigning the service. Because this is what you'll be responsible to do when you go back to your buildings tomorrow. And because you need to make sure that you've assigned yourself to all the students that you are working with. So you're going to add yourself to the team member page, but you're going to also add yourself to providing those services. Rebecca, you and Rudy will not.
And providing services, both. We added.
If you're providing that service, yes. If you're the specialized instruction, if you're the moderate needs teacher that's providing that specialized instruction, then you need to assign yourself for that. If you're not, you're just case managing that student and you're not providing any, then you wouldn't add yourself. It's only based on the services that are sitting there on that IEP. So social emotional skills development, who do you think can give social emotional skills development? What's that? Mental health, right? It could be a psych, social. It could even be a behavior specialist. It could be a learning specialist. It could actually still be an SLP, but I see it very rare for an SLP. I see it as a learning specialist, a mental health provider. Yes?
When you specialize instruction, do you want it to do inside and outside?
Right, so that was the one thing that I asked them to change for me, which they haven't yet. So the question was, how do we know inside or outside? We have to drill it into the IEP itself to find that. I've asked the company to, do you see where it says specialized instruction and it says direct, but it doesn't tell you if it's inside or outside? I asked them to pull that out and put that on the page, but they haven't. So you'd actually have to go into the IEP to find out which one of those is direct inside or direct outside. It says it in the bulk of the IEP. It doesn't say it on the outside of the IEP. It sucks. If you do both, assign yourself for both. Yes. Mm-hmm. Any question about assigning yourself for providing? So you got some work to do tomorrow when you get back to your buildings. Has anybody already assigned ourselves? Oh, awesome. Look at these people. I love it.
So I have a question.
Yes.
I actually picked one of my own kids that I'm working on, and I've already updated all this, but it's not showing.
Right. So that's a great question. She says, why is it not showing in this practice session when I did it in production? It's because the latest copy of this training site was done in August. So this data that we're working off in the training site is only as good as August 1st when we first copied over production. We'll do it again probably sometime in January where it'll be fresh again in training, but we just needed something to work on in training. It didn't have to be fresh to the day. It just takes up a lot of server space and it just doesn't matter. So that's why it's not updated here. You might have done it in production. It's not showing in training because we haven't copied over that piece. All right, awesome. I'm so glad you guys did assign providers because we lost money last year in our district because we didn't have people assigning providers correctly. So thank you for doing that for us. Appreciate it. Okay, everybody's so far comfortable with the managed team and assigned provider piece. Now we're going to move on to what else you see at the on the side of the IEP itself. I want to bring your attention to those colored pieces up there. Those are called chevrons. I'm going to give you a little heads up. Sometimes they're correct, sometimes they're not. Most of the time they are. And if it's overdue, it'll yell at you. It'll have a red exclamation mark saying, your IEP's late. Get on it. Poor Rebecca in her role, as it was my role last 2 years, is I have to run a list. She has to run a report and find all the overdue and send you nice little reminder emails. Hey, you're overdue on your IEP. Hey, this kid was due for a reeval. Here's a good question. Hopefully you can answer this. IEP is due in September. Reeval is due in November. What should be done in September? You should, what? Push that reeval up to that annual. Now you can do double work. You could do your annual in September and then the reeval in November, but that's pretty stupid in my brain. But you get into a quandary because you're at September. How much time do you have to evaluate if you came back from school? None. So when really should have that been done? May. So that's why we really have to take a look at our dates when we're getting ready for our school years and go, ooh, that kid's due, that reeval is going to be due next September. If it's anywhere between October 15th, if there's a reeval due before October 15th, we push all those into April or May, even February if you want. Push those off so you're not stuck, because if anything's due before October 15th, and by the way, why would I use October 15th as the date? That's 60 days from the beginning of school. You should give yourself 60 days to get everything done. So you get yourself in a quandary when you haven't looked at your dates and now you got a reeval that you didn't think you had because you thought you had it till November and you're like, oh crap, I got to push that sucker over into September, okay? So just make sure, be careful about your dates and make sure that you're doing your process right. Then the other thing that's sitting on the IEP is the goals. So you'll see the goals there. And if you notice, how many of you guys are on quarterly? Anybody doing quarterly progress reporting? Okay, so you already might have seen that there might be a yellow line at the top of a lot of your goals that says progress reporting is due. And therefore, you just click on the enter, and we're going to go through that a little bit later. But you actually report out on the progress. And so we can go walk you through that later. Okay, we are almost at 6. Do you want to take a 5 or 10 minute break, or do you rather us power through? Keep going. Okay, question?
I was just going to ask the log.
Okay, so logging, you can log services. So some SLPs, mental health, other people like to log services and keep track, especially if they're like in a group, like a mental health group or a speech language group, socialization group, and they want to log a service and they want to keep track of it in Enrich. You're not required to. A lot of mental health folks don't feel comfortable doing that, or they can't keep up on that. That's fine. They can do their paper pencil mode as long as you're logging services somehow. You have to be keeping track of when you see students and logging what you're doing with them. But if you wanted to log services, you can click on the log button and it'll bring you to a log where you can actually enter in an entry of what happened. So if I click on log, oh boy, my log's not working. I'm going to go to my, let's see if this will work on my log. We were having some problems with the dev site before, so I don't know if it's going to let me do it. All right, so view service log. Nope, see, it's not going to let me do it. Usually it'll say create entry, and it's not loading for some reason. But when you click on that log, it'll say create entry. You put in your entry, you save it for the day, and you actually can say if the student's absent. How many times we go to try to get a kid for a social skills group or something like that, and they're not there? There's a way in there that you can like check absence so you can track that. So when you go in the IEP meeting, the parent's like, why haven't you given this service? Well, here's all my log entries. This is every time I try to get them and they were absent, or they refused to come with me. Right? That happens sometimes with kids. So that's a way that we can keep track of that. Thank you for that question. All righty. So back to our list here. All right. So we have done create student groups, we've assigned providers, and we've created our own group. Now we're going to start on our reeval. So we're on the student that has 5 tabs, correct? So back to our student, I want everybody to make sure that they're on the programs tab with me, on their student with five tabs. Now up in the right-hand corner, you'll see the black points where it says add action, add IEP, end special education. So ending special education is when a student, what? How do we exit out of special ed? Okay, exit, graduate. So they moved or they've graduated.
When the team decides they don't need services.
Right, which is a what? When you staff out a student, and that has to be at a what? Yeah, reeval or try. You have to, in order to staff out a student from special ed, it must be a reeval. You cannot do it in an annual. All right, so that's a reeval, staffed out. What's one other way that a student will exit from special ed? Parents revoke. Absolutely. Parents revoke. Those are the ways that they can end special ed. So ending special ed, we're going to go through a little later, okay? At IEP, what do you think I would do when I click that button? Make a new annual review only. You got an IEP coming up and it's just an annual review, you click on Add IEP. So with that being said, what button do you think I'm going to pick if I have to start a reevaluation process? Add action. All right, so everybody do it with me. We're going to click on Add action. All right, what action do you think I'm going to pick to start? What do we have to do? We always have to start with consent. Consent for reeval, special eval. The reason? Reeval. Next. Now, let me talk a little bit about special eval while that's being created. A special evaluation is only done when you're in between a reeval and an annual, okay? You're not at the IEP point at all. And maybe the parent wants you to do some testing. I want to see how they're doing on this. Or I really think there's some OT needs here. Can you see where they are? We're not looking at eligibility. We're only adding, maybe potentially adding a service, or maybe we might be removing a service. But it's not tied to eligibility at all, and it's between an annual and a reeval. Now you can add and remove service at an annual without doing a special eval if you have the data and you can put it in the present levels of educational performance. But it's when you're in between, you just had an annual, and now like a month later, you're going, crap, she already got all her OT goals, and I want to get her off of OT. That's when you do it, a special eval. Yes?
So you're just doing annual. It's consent for re-eval. And then re-eval still, right?
Yeah, we're going through a reevaluation process right now. I was just talking about the special eval because this is the same consent you would use, except for the reason re-eval, you would have chosen special eval. And what happens when you click on the consent for special eval, only the evaluation page comes up because it's not tied to anything else. When I do this consent for reevaluation, as soon as I finalize this consent, eligibility will pop out. What else will pop out? What else will we need? The IEP. And what else are we doing? Evaluating, right? So those three pieces are going to kick out after we get consent for reevaluation. But when we do a consent for special eval, only eval pops out.
Okay, special eval and annual?
No. Special eval is only when we're looking outside of the annual process or outside of the reeval process and we want to add a service or remove a service. And it's not at an annual. It's like you just had the annual and a month or 2 months later or 3 months later, you want to remove or add the service. That's when you do a special. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to clarify, because my question is when you're doing just an annual.
Right, it's just add IEP.
Okay.
Can you repeat her question?
So she was asking, when I just have an annual, all you have to do is click add IEP, that add IEP button. Yep. Okay. All right, so let's fill out this consent. So this is where you need your summative assessment package that I gave you as a printout. And I want you to follow along. We're at this section where it says reeval, and we started our consent, and so it should be on the second page. It says fill out the entire form, identifying 2 areas that you'll be evaluating and why. Type the word text in the rest of the boxes and use these dates. So it's very important you use these dates because it's very date specific, this program. Okay, and I gave you all the dates that you need. So what's my start date? 7/1. So I'm going to go 7/1. Okay, date sent, 7/1. I was very, very on top of things. All right. Now when I go down to this, and I'm going to do I do and we do. We're doing this together, so you follow along with me, and you're going to be doing yours. If you click on the parent guardian, it'll automatically populate. You just click on them to add them. Click on the box, click on them to add them. It's pretty nice. Based on a view of existing information, do you need evaluation? Yes. Reason. What's the reason we're evaluating? Yeah, reevaluation, right? To re-evaluate eligibility. Okay. Now, your homework or your in-class assignments is pick 2 areas. Pick any 2 areas that you want to assess. I'm going to do academic and communication. Is there other areas? Travel training. I want to say other could be, some people look at this as adaptive. Adaptive can also go under social emotional. You decide on where you think it's appropriate. Okay? O&M should go under travel and training. So if you've got a student that needs O&M, that's where they go. That would be orientation and mobility for your visually impaired students. Okay? For this one, I'm going to say no. Okay? Parents, safeguards. You actually have to provide your consent or your procedural safeguards when you send out a consent. They actually have links to them in English and Spanish right there. You should have them in your buildings somewhere. You should, if you don't have them on your desktop, you can click on that when you're in production site. Don't do it now because it'll jam up the system. But you can click on that and save a PDF of it to your file, and you'll always have it. So you can email that PDF to parents when you send consent. You can send the consent by PDF, or you can print it off and send it home for them to sign.
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. John, did you have a question?
No.
Okay, you good? All right, so you just still have to provide it. So we have to say the date that we provided it, and many times we do that on the same day we're sending it home. Yes?
What if they're Vietnamese?
So we have some that we have interpreters that can interpret the forms and call and explain the procedural safeguards. Any language other than Spanish and English, we usually typically get an interpreter to interpret that information. Great question. She said, what was it? What if they were Vietnamese? So I said, we usually have interpreters that help interpret that information. So the date we set procedural safeguards, I think, was also 7/1. Okay. So this first box is saying this proposal is based on what? And I want you to understand that this first box is saying, what are you testing and why? So I chose communication and academics. So this is how I usually phrase it. You can phrase it any way you want, but I usually say formal and or informal. I'm leaving myself pretty open, aren't I? Because if I say just formal, then the parent's going to assume I'm just doing formal. If I say just informal, they're going to assume the other way. So I like to cover my bases and say formal and or informal assessment in the areas of communication and academics will be completed to identify skills and progress and needs. So something like that. You don't have to do it. I'm just giving you a guide. That should be pretty clear to the parent of what you're going to be assessing and why. We need it. And I usually will put in there, we have this data, we need this data, we are lagging in this area, that's why we need to assess. So if that is what we're testing and why in the first box, what do you assume goes in the second box? What's that? Yeah, what we're not testing and why, right? So no testing in the areas, or no assessment, or whatever you would say, in the areas of, and I would list them all, motor, blah, 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 okay? Because special education team has current evaluative data and whatever. So you're telling them why you're not going to test in that area and why. Rebecca.
Side note, will these boxes automatically spell check?
Oh, so great question. Thank you, Rebecca. So I am a terrible typist. Okay. If I click on this spell check box right there, it doesn't automatically do it, but if I click on that, it'll bring up my spell check, and then it'll redline it, and then it'll give me suggestions. Okay. So that's the spell check. We also have in this box, if you notice, we've got other options. This plus sign is called a text assist. It means that if we've written some guidance that can help you insert more pieces, and there's a lot of it, especially in the 15 plus IEP, you'll get there. There's not a lot in the consents because we want that to be specific to the kid. But sometimes you might find some text assist. If it's there, you click on text assist and it'll be there and it'll ask you to insert. Okay, so that's what that text assist box is. All right, so before we go any further, I just want to point out a couple of things for you. On the left side is called our left navigation side. And then this part that we're typing in is called the working document. What you need to know is this working document does not look anything like what it looks like when it prints. It's the weirdest thing. Okay, so the left navigation side is nice because you can jump from section to section within the form to get down there faster. And especially when you're writing in an IEP, you might want to jump down to the parent log or parent somewhere. It just brings you to the different parts of the IEP, of the working document. Okay, if ever you want to take a look and go, I want to see what this looks like when I'm printing this. Now do you see these are the sections that I can jump to. There's a document section and there's an attachment section. So I'm sorry, what was your name again that helped me point out? Next to Jamie. What's your name's Jamie too? Wow. Okay, so Jamie pointed out, hey, Jennifer, when you were showing us that upload attachment thing, and I said you could do it to the Files tab, you can also do it, it's embedded in almost all the forms. So do you notice where it says attach and there's an upload button? It gives you the same prompt, you can upload, and it actually, when you upload like that, it'll bring it into the document, but it'll also put it in the Files tab. It puts it in both places. So that's where you can attach. Would I need to upload on a consent? Oh yeah, you bet your bottom you will. You want that parent to sign that says yes, you can get consent. Then under the document section, anything that can actually be printed will be listed there. So if I don't click print, but I just click on the actual piece itself, it'll bring up a preview of what the form will look like. Okay? All right. So one of the things that I want you to know is you want to save and save often. If you notice on the left, it says last saved. It hasn't saved. This system does not do an autosave. So if I were to close this document, or my internet shut down or something like that, or I left it, it wouldn't have saved anything. So you want to save, and you want to save often. And when you save, it'll give you a little check mark. And it also will tell you on the left side, which we really can't see from this projection, but I think you can see it on yours. It'll say last saved, and it'll give you the time. Everything is time stamped. Every time you log in, every time you touch a student's tab, file, anything, it's logging all the things that you do all the time. Now, if my internet were to go down and I didn't save, it'll actually give you a warning. It'll pop up and it says, internet connectivity is down. Do you want me to keep trying to reconnect, or you want me to stop? If you say stop, nothing's going to get saved, potentially. When you go back in, it'll say recover save, recover changes. Something happened and you left it and you didn't save it. Do you want to recover it? And you can go back and recover. But if somebody else has typed on it and they didn't hit recover, you might have lost your data. So always save and save often. Okay? All right, so we're going down. We've got our boxes that we've filled out. Then any other factors? So other factors, what if this student has had a couple of concussions? Would that be a factor in your eval? Probably so. What if the student's parents are going through a nasty divorce and the kid, you're seeing lots of behaviors and lots of issues and problems at school? That could be a factor. Maybe his best friend, grandpa, just passed away. A lot of other things happen, that factors that come into this reevaluation. So you can identify those factors there. We're just going to put text right here, okay? Now, return consent to, that's you. You want them to bring the consent back to you.
But what if there's no other factors?
Then you could say none at this time. What if there were no other factors? Then you can say none at this time.
And I have a question about text assist.
Yes.
This is a real question. Is this, when you hit text assist and there is assisted text, is it exclusive to this student?
No, it's just text assist that I built that everybody can jump in and use.
And it knew to use the student's name?
Yes, because is there a text assist on this form? On which one?
But the last two boxes.
This one right here? Well, thank you for bringing it up. I forgot I did that. Okay. Yes. Okay, so this was a really crafty, genius part of my programming, is that I figured out a way, with some training and some help, to automatically put text assist in which that it will automatically populate the student's name or student pieces, that date of birth and other pieces like that. So I programmed it so it would automatically. So that's why she was asking, is it specific? Well, I'm working on Mark, and mine says Mark, and yours probably says somebody else, right? I automatically programmed it so it's specific to that student. Most of the text assist in here is pretty general, but some of it I did program for it to bring in the student's name, because I was tired of reviewing IEPs that kept on saying this student, a student. And I wanted to be specific to that kid, so I programmed it so it'll automatically pull your student's name in there. It's pretty cool, pretty jazzy. Pretty proud of that. Okay, so that's what text assist look like. And if I want to put it in, all I have to do is click insert. And the cool thing about that, when I can delete it and change it and add to it, it's not like some of the other systems where you can't make any changes to it. You can amend that or change that text assist that I added. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. It really is. All right, so when I put my name in here, I wanted to point out where it says address. Now, if I pick school address, it's going to automatically populate your address for the school. Now, for those of you that are in multiple locations, you're at this student's file attached to this school. So it's going to give it to you at that school. So it's always going to know the school of the student, not your school, but the school of the student. If you want another address, you can click on other and add it in. ECE folks, where's Mary? Mary, you can pick, you have 2 locations there. Did you see that? You can pick ECE North or ECE South, okay? All right, parent log. Why do you think parent log would be important to do on a reevaluation consent? Right, there you go. We need 3 contacts, 3 different ways, 3 different days, right? Can't be doing them consecutive days either. You can't call the parent, call the parent, call the parent 3 days in and call it good. Call the parent, send it home, email, and don't do them on consecutive days. Wait some time. What's the rule about consent? What if I never get it back from a parent? I can do it anyways. Why? Why can I do it anyways on a reeval? They're already in special ed and it's implied consent. Very good. Can I do this on an initial? No. Absolutely not. What happens if the parent never brings that back? What happens to the process? It stops. We're done. Thank you for playing. Right. So on the reeval, if we have documented 3 different ways, 3 different days, we can move forward with it. What if the parent says, I refuse consent?
You're done.
Are we done? Students in SPED, no, parent refuses.
They just have to until they revoke. If they decide to revoke.
Okay, no, they're refusing evaluation. They're saying, no, you cannot evaluate my kid. Douglas County evaluates too many kids, too many times. I'm sick of the assessment. You're not evaluating my kid. But I still want them in SPED. What are your options? On a reeval. What if you have plenty of data that you can find that kid eligible again? Sure can. Okay, Mom, and I had that here at this school where I used to teach. I had this parent, she absolutely hated assessment. And I'm like, oh gosh, here it comes. And she goes, nope, I refuse. Luckily, I had done a lot of informal stuff throughout the year to find her eligible again. Now, I had this one episode about 5 years ago where I couldn't. And I had to tell the parent, okay, I don't have enough evaluative data to requalify your son. Therefore, when we get to eligibility, I'm going to tell you I don't have enough data. Therefore, our team may find him ineligible, which means he no longer receives special ed services. Is that what you want? And she had to make that decision. Yes?
Is that for any disability?
Any disability. Yep. So you do your best to get that consent and get them to sign that. But it's tough. Question?
For a reval, does there have to be formative assessment?
No, you don't need formal assessment. If you have enough informal assessment to requalify that student, absolutely. Yep. Question? Wait, she's got to get the...
I'm the center-based TOD. My kids are deaf. They're still going to be deaf 3 years from now.
Correct.
So
but that
really,
means that you're going to have enough evaluative data, right? I mean, they don't just all of a sudden can hear. That's enough evaluated data right there. Same with visually impaired. Yeah. Pretty much not going to happen. Yeah. Question?
Under the parent contact log, it says date. So that was, you put in the date for your first attempt.
Yep.
And the method in which you tried on your first attempt.
Yep.
Then under details, on your second and third attempt is when you date and...
No, actually, you can add 3 different ones.
You can
so
keep adding dates?
Right. So if I put in a date and I contacted this mom on July 1st, okay, and my method of contact was I emailed her, and I got no response, okay, and then I'm just going to save it and go away from it and wait. I'm going to wait until I get something else. Then I go back and I click on this add. Do you see this add button? And then I start my next date. And I called her back on July 8th. I waited a week. And then this time I called her. Left a message. Okay? You should have 3 different one of those before you can go to implied consent. Okay? Any questions about that? Thank you, Jamie, for bringing that up. That's awesome. You guys lead me right into this. You guys should be teaching this class, honestly. It's great. All right, and if we get down to the point where it says, do you want to print the log? I say no. I say no because I don't want it printed. I don't want the parents seeing that I'm, So I say no. But you can say yes. It's your choice. It's your IEP, not mine. So I say no. And now I'm going to save again because I always save often. Now, here's my choices. Remember we talked about these. Reeval comes back signed. We can say consent received. Consent implied. We have 3 documentations. It's implied. I can move forward. Consent received special eval, which we're not at a special, we're at reeval. Consent not received multiple contacts. That's for the special eval. Consent for special eval received. This is if you're trying to get an FBA, functional behavior assessment. Or the last one, consent denied, but IEP team is moving forward. So that's just like Andy who's saying, I have teacher of the deaf. I'm pretty much going to move forward on this one. So she would select the last one, consent denied, but IEP team is going forward if the parent denied consent for the evaluation. Yes.
And what are we using as end date?
So ours, we're going to look on our sheet. What's our outcome date from our sheet? 7/19. Now I want to show you something. As soon as I put this, and I don't have to use the calendar, I can type in 7/19/2014. Okay? And I'm going to say consent received. That's fine. Does it say 7/1? Yeah, I thought it was 7/1. All right. 7/1. What happened to my save button? Uh-oh, it went to finalize. How do I save? Those first questions. How do I save when the finalize button showed up? Well, there's 2 ways that you can do it. One is you can back the date and the outcome out. So if I were going to take this date out and take this, then my save button's back. Okay? If I decide, I go say 7/1/2014, and I say consent received, and I click finalize, and right when it's ready to finalize, I go, oh crap, I forgot to put something in. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I can hit cancel, and it'll bring me right back into this place where I'd back it out, delete it, and go back to save. So you always have to finalize every document twice. So you have a finalize here, and on PCs, sometimes it's hard to get down to that. So you might have to control minus to zoom out to get to it, or I always use a mouse. Mac people, 2-finger scroll to get down to the finalize button, and you hit the second finalize button. Okay? Now, because we're all doing it at one time, and there's only 15 of us, so I think it should be good. When we had 50 of us doing it, it crashed the system. You have to know that the firepower towards this training site is dinky compared to the firepower on the production site. Okay? And do you see where I got my deadlocked? Yeah, deadlocked means that we're all trying to do it at the same time. I'll just wait. Has anybody gotten the finalized twice? All right. Just hang tight. Just go back and do it again. And every time you get to the finalization stage, it actually previews the document again for you. It's pretty nice. I'm deadlocked again. Yay, I'm finally done. Okay, so we're going to hit close consent. And now we scroll all the way down. If you did the consent correctly and you finalized, you should have 3 green bars. Does everybody have 3 green bars? Everybody with me? Okay, I'll hang tight. I'll start talking while you're doing that too. All right, so the IEP is still sitting up there because it's still current, right? We haven't had the re-eval, so it's still going to sit there. But what should have come out was the initial eval or re-eval, which is the actual evaluation form, and eligibility and IEP. Now, mark my words, Kim's seen this with me. We've done it 5 million times. This is only the second time in the 3 years I've done this that they've actually come up in order. Because they almost always don't come up in order. Yours will probably look like different from mine. Okay? So I want you to pay attention to that and go, I mean, you can work on these pieces, but the order in which you do them is you evaluate first. Then you can go to your IEP document and do some work in it, but you're not going to finalize the IEP because you can't until you find them eligible. Okay? And there's not much you can do on the eligibility except for write a notice of meeting. Because what happens if I were to write in the eligibility form? Why can I not do that? Right. It's predetermination. You cannot write on anything in the eligibility. Thank you. Good job, Andy. You can't. It's illegal if you predetermine for an IEP eligibility meeting. We'll be in court in no time flat. Okay? So we do want to do the evaluation, and that's where we're going to end tonight, is on the eval. So we got one more piece to do, and then we're done for tonight. Can you scroll down? You might have had something open already on there. Let me take a look real quick. No, it could be that there were other things that were open. Oh, you got a special eval.
Oh, consent for re-eval, special eval.
Yeah, I did that. That's what.
No, but we were on the consent. It's because your consent you chose. Okay, let's go back. What's this kid's name?
Christian.
All right, so let's do this one. I'll jump in there with you. You should have 3. I'm going to jump into Donna's, and I'm going to show you what she sees. Last name? Final last name. This one? Yep. Okay. So if you take a look, so she's got a consent, she's got a special eval. So why did a special evaluation kick out? What is the reason she picked? Special eval instead of re-eval, right? So I want to show you this. It happens. This is why we're learning. This is why we're training, okay? How do I get back to the form? If you notice, even on yours, where did that consent go that you just finalized? It like disappeared, right? So to find what we just did, Donna's going to go to view history, and she's going to look to see what she did. And do you see what she did? Do you see your reason, Donna? You did a consent. You did it right with the dates, but look at your reason. Special instead of re-eval. So to fix it, this is how Donna's going to fix it, is she is going to go click on that piece, and unfortunately she has to, she cannot do an administrative, she has to delete it and recreate it. That's one of the things that I want, and I'm sorry, Donna, to use you as an example, so I'm not picking on you, I promise. But when you're in the initiation phase, and if you pick the wrong thing, you can't go and admin edit and fix. If it's something else like a date field or something like that, you can fix that. But if it's in the initiation part where you're hitting reason, you can't go back and pick a different reason. the program won't allow you to do it. And I wanted to show people, because I hardly ever get to show people that. And Rebecca has to answer those questions a lot when people email. So you absolutely cannot recreate it. So you have to hit delete. And you'll have to go back to add action, create consent again, but this time choose reeval.
And get the parent's signature all over again? If that was the case, like let's say
Yeah, if that was the case and it's printing out as a special, yeah. Yes.
So if you go back in there.
Click on view history.
Right, I did that, and then I got back in here.
But you're fine because
Right.
you're at reeval.
Right, so now how do I get out of here?
Oh, then just click on your programs tab.
I knew that.
Oh, she just wanted to know how to get back. If she opened that up, how does she get back? And all you have to do to get back to your programs, back to where you were, was hitting the programs tab again. And it'll bring back the programs. So I'm going to jump off of yours, Donna, so you can fix that. And I'm going to go back to my kiddo, which was, who was I working on? Mark, right? Go back to my practice IEPs and find out who I was working on Mark. Okay, so I wanted to point out something really quick while Donna's doing that, and Rebecca or Kim, can you help Donna get caught back up if she needs any help? Do you notice on the very top underneath my home, look at it, those are all my students that I put in my group. So I can go toggle between my students up here. Isn't that cool that all the kids in your group are right there? You don't have to go back to your student groups and all that. You can toggle between those kids if you put them all in your group. They're going to come up on every kid when you bring up. So right up here where it says home, all your students are right there. From the
We had a situation over here where they were getting 4 green tabs, and one of them was prior written notice. And I was trying to figure out why, and do you know why it is? Consent denied. So then they need prior written notice, correct?
Yes. If the consent was denied, then it gives you a prior written notice to talk about why you're moving forward. It gives you extra documentation to say this is why we got to document why we're moving forward as an IEP team, because we feel like we've got enough evaluative data to move forward. Great question. Okay, so I'm going back to Mark here. And Donna, do you mind if I jump ahead? I know you're playing to catch up, but I want to. Donna, are you good with me? No, just type text. That's fine. Okay, so next in our process, we're working on the evaluation. So I would like you to. Oh, the other thing while we're here is, do you see where the blue line says consent for reeval/special eval? If you click on it, all it does is bring you back to the form you already finalized. It's saying that this piece is pending because of what you did. A lot of people like to click on that blue line and that does nothing. It just brings you back to what you already did. So it's just saying why those things kicked out, because they were kicked out because of that form, okay? So everybody, I'd like you to click on Create for your evaluation. Click on Create. We are down in the evaluation step 2, and your components for this assessment, our assignment is we're going to complete a vision and hearing screening. We're going to put one assessment that's in the diagnostic library, and we're going to do another assessment that's not. Those are the 3 components. When Rebecca and I are checking your homework, if we see that you have these 3 components, that gets approved. If you don't have these 3 components, it gets rejected. Back to unfinalized, we'll have to fix it. So if you follow along, we'll be good.
Go back and say one more time.
So I'm on your summative evaluation. The 3 pieces that you have to get done, every box where it says component, those are the components that we're going to look for to check your homework. So you must have the vision and hearing screening. I'm going to show you how to do that. Assessment scores in a diagnostic library. Assessment scores not in a diagnostic library. So those are the 3 things we're going to look at when we're checking your homework. Okay? If it's not there, we'll reject it. What happens, it sends you an email saying it's been rejected and why. And it goes back to draft form, and you'll have to fix it, refinalize. If it's correct, it just gets approved, and then you don't have to do anything. But you don't get an email that's saying, hey, it's been approved, which is kind of stinky, but That's the way it goes. Okay, so that's what we're actually going to be doing. So let's go to our evaluation. Everybody hit create. Reason, what's our reason? Reeval. Don't pick initial, because what are you going to have to do? Start it all over again. All right, reeval. Next. All right. So we're on the evaluation. What's our date? 7/1. All right. Data consent should come in, right? It automatically populates that the data consent should be 7/1 because that's based on what? Yeah, the consent that you already finalized. Okay. So hearing and vision screening. If you get to the evaluation screening type, you click on screening type. We're going to go vision. Now, does this say you have to? Do you have to do this yourself? I'm sorry, but I'm not a vision specialist. I am not going to do hearing and vision screening, right? Where do you think I'm going to get that data? From where? I heard a lot of...
From the big old school screening.
From the school screening. And where would I find that information in the school screening? Where is it kept?
In their summary.
It's not going to be in Enrich. Infinite Campus, I see, right. All right, so I am going to give you, there is a resource manual slide that shows you where I can get that. So I'm going to pull that slide up so you can see it. Oops, wrong one. So vision and hearing screenings. This is in the program basics. Oops. Sorry. Let me find out where it is. It's actually in another manual because we're already in the reeval. Okay. It's in the reeval. So in IC, if I were to open up IC, and I'm looking up my kiddo Mark, and I'm not making you guys do this. You could just follow along or take notes. But if I'm going to look up my student Mark Shar, which he's probably not here anymore because he's a senior. So I'm going to look up what he was. Do I have his name right? What's his name? I looked up this kid right? S-H-A-A-R. I have two A. Okay, Mark. All right, so if I look up Mark, what you want to do very carefully, because this is where people get tripped up. I'm on the search tab. You need to go to the index tab. Then you have to go under health. And then you go reports. Wait a minute. Nope. You go over student information, general, health, general, and then up here where it says screenings, it'll give you the last screening that he had. Vision, hearing screening, grade 8. And then it'll give you all the data you need for your vision and hearing screening. For this practice, we're just going to make it up, okay? But I wanted you to see that you go under index. So index.
So you don't go to the student first.
So you click on the student first. Yeah. Then you go to the index tab. Then you go to student information. Then you go under health. Then you go into general. And then you go over to the main page and you click on screenings. And then you find the screening that you want. And that's where you're going to do it. If you're the case manager, it's your responsibility to put this information in, not the nurses. So you need to be doing this if you're the case manager. What's that? What's that?
It should be the nurses, I'm just saying.
The nurses, we don't have nurses in every school. We have nurses that have 25 schools each. And if they were writing just vision and screening IEPs, that's all they would be doing and not providing health services for kids. So that's why they don't do it. We used to have a school nurse in every school, and I would agree with you. If they were in one school, then that should be her responsibility. But when they have 25 each, I worry. So at least you know how to get to it. So now I'm going to my Enrich. So we're going to make it up. So we're going to go to vision and the date. My date, you can make up any date. Okay, so you could pick any date as long as it's before July 1. So I'm going to say that he got tested in May 6th. And I'm going to say vision is 2020. And now when I'm done adding my vision, I click over here and I click on add. And now I'm going to put in hearing. And I'm going to use the same date, May 6th. That was a good date for me. You can make whatever you want. And then I'm just going to say passed. And I'm going to click save. Okay? That's pretty easy. Good? So far, so good? Okay. I'm the person that got consent. I'm the case manager. So it's my responsibility to help my teammates who are reevaluating this student as well to know what consent I got, to save them a little time. They can always go back in and find out what I got a consent on. They can look at it. But to help them out, what I just did in my teams is that I would open up the evaluation page, I'd put the screening in, and then I would go through each one of the sections. So general intelligence, did I get consent for that? I didn't choose general intelligence, so I'm clicking no. So now if my psych and social goes in there, they're like, whoa, she didn't get consent. That's a no. Okay? She could also look at the consent herself, but I said no. I did get communication, so that's a yes. And I did get academic performance, that's a yes. And I did not get social emotional, and I did not get health, and I did not get motor, and I did not get other. So by doing that, I have now triggered that for my team to go, ooh, she only got those 2 consents. Yes?
So when I clicked on yes for communicative, it said, is this assessment resolved?
Yeah, we're going to get to that. Okay, that's basically what I would start off doing. John?
What is your best practice to err on the side of caution and get more mental health or cognitive or whatever?
Okay, I always get that question, and every year this is what I say.
Can you repeat the question?
The question is, would it be just safe to just get consent for everything? Or especially mental health or other areas, just safe, okay? This is an SLD kid. He probably hasn't had any behavior kids, I'm just making it up. I'm not gonna ask for it. The reason why I'm not gonna ask for it, and I won't do it blanket across the board, is because when we get consent from parents, what's the implication? When I ask a parent for consent, what does that parent assume? You will have assessment in that area. I had a psych at this school where I taught. She never, almost never evaluated a kid. Never. She almost did review a record every time. She never even pulled the kid out to talk to them. And if I did the blanket assessment, that parent's now going to assume that there's going to be some testing happening, and then the psych comes back to me, oh, I'm just doing a review of records. Now we go to eligibility, the parent goes, hey, where's that evaluation that you're going to do on my kid on social emotional? That parent assumes it's going to get done. So if you're not doing any assessment, don't ask for it, because that parent now can take you back to court and say, you know what, you said you were going to evaluate this kid and you didn't. And that's misrepresentation. So a little caveat with that is that I had this other school that I work with, and her psych was amazing. For every student, she would at least do a checklist. Even if for a kid she was just reviewing records, we didn't need to do new psych. We had great records for WISC. It was fine. But what they wanted to do, she wanted to see how the kid was doing. So she had an informal checklist that she did, and she would check in with the student, and she'd have the parent like fill out this informal checklist and have the student, is that an informal assessment? You bet your bottom. Is she covered? Yeah. So her team often would do that on all kids. Every reeval, they would put psychosocial because she did that I, with mine, would never do that. So it depends on your psych and social and what they do at a reeval. But a review of records looking at a file is not an informal assessment. You've not ever seen the kid, you haven't done any assessment with that kid, that can't count as an assessment. And if that's what that parent's assuming you were doing, then you better do an assessment. You better not just open that file and review records. Yeah.
If you have an SLD kid and say the team has
behavioral concerns, yeah, it's always you always get testing for what you think you need testing in. Always. You don't do more than you think because now the parent assumes you're going to do it. So be careful on choosing the assessments. Be careful and make sure you're communicating with your team members. You might have a psych social that really likes to do informal stuff every reeval. Perfect. That's perfect. Then ask for the consent. And you can cover your bases, because what if, John, if I asked for consent and you said, Jen, I'm going to do an informal. And what if you bring that kid in and you realize, wow, I need to do an adaptive. I need to do a basket on this kid. But I already got consent for formal or informal. Are you covered? Absolutely. But if I didn't ask for that consent, then I'd have to go back, edit that consent, get new consent from the parent, which kind of stalls the process. So that's why the planning process is so important. Your role as a moderate needs case manager or SLP case manager or SSN, SCD, whatever, you have to look at all that data and you really have to determine, what do I have, what I do not have? Ask your other colleagues, hey, Johnny's really acting out. Do you think we should do a BASC, or can you do an informal? Should I ask for consent? What about communication? This is where all that communication has to happen prior to you sending consent out. I'm tired of seeing how many people get consent and then they realize they never talked to their SLP or they never talked to their psychosocial and they're like, oh, I really should have gotten that. Well, you should have asked them before. It's a little too late when you've already asked the consent from the parent. Okay? Does that make sense? These are great questions about consent. Okay. So I'm going to save this and I want you to hit close. All right, so we've hit one of our assignments. We put our screening in. Now our second assignment, diagnostic library. Who could tell me where the diagnostic library is? What? Where is it? Where is it on one of these magical pieces of Enrich? Yes, test scores tab. Right. So let's go to the test scores tab because I am the academic person and I'm going to put some test scores in. I've tested Mark, I pulled him aside, and I'm going to put my scores in. So I'm going to click on test scores. Ooh, look at this kid's got some test scores. So looks like he had a self. He also had a TCAP and his Woodcock-Johnson. But I did the key math with him. So I'm going to click on add new test. Did you guys see where that was? I'm sorry I did that fast. Up at the top, where it says add new test, we're going to click on add new test. Okay? Now I can sort it by any test and it'll give me this huge, long list of all the tests that are in the diagnostic library. Or I can take a shortcut and say, I only want to see what academic tests we have in this library. So I got a key math A. I'm going to choose it, and then I'm going to put next. Okay? Now, what it's going to give me is basically a template. No interpretation whatsoever goes in here. It's pure scores, raw data. Okay? So I'm going to say I gave him the test on the 2nd of July. I'm very, very efficient. So I'm going to say July 2nd is when I gave him the test. Got consent on the 1st, test him on the 2nd. All right, and for this exercise, we're just going to make up scores. So you pick any test you want in any area that you asked for. It has to be an area that you got consent for. Remember, I picked communication and academics. If you pick something else, you have to pick a test in that area, okay? And I'm just going to put random numbers here. Pick a test in academic performance. I'm just putting total random numbers. And then I'm going to click save. You only have to do 5 scores. Yeah. Question? No. If you did the WJ4, don't pick the 3. Just you'll have to do it in a Word document until the 4 gets uploaded in here.
Okay.
Because the 3 information comes in. And the 4 has totally new subtests that are not in here yet. Andy, question? No? You need the microphone? No? Oh, Jamie's got a question.
I just had a question about that. When it lists out the self, it says self 4 in there, and the self 5 is out, but then the other set of self is just self without it.
Right. I haven't updated the training. We do have the self 5 in our production site.
So when it lists it on here, it is not the 5 is nowhere on here, right?
Right. Not here in this training site, but it is in our production site. And I want you to stay away from the self because the self doesn't pull in. For some reason, I haven't fixed it on the training end. So if you could pick another communication test, that would be great. Because I was checking homework the other night, and I was like, Sunday night, I was like, oh, she did pick self, she did pull it in, and yet it didn't pull in. So there's something wrong with our self.
Pick a different test.
I don't know, just pick any other assessment. Okay.
So for the academic performance piece,
yes,
the Woodcock-Johnson's fine?
Yeah, you could pick the WJ3. I didn't pick it because he already had a WJ3 there. And I didn't want to do another one. I wanted you to see the difference.
Gotcha.
You can pick any one you want. And just put in some scores. Now, once I hit save, you notice my key math came up. If I needed to go back and add scores, I would just go back to the key math and click on individual. And then I can edit test and I can add stuff in there, okay? And I'm just going to click on test scores. Now just give me a thumbs up when you've added a test with 5 scores. Okay, I got 1, 2, 3, 4. Just 5 scores. Yeah, you can leave the rest empty. I just need 5 scores. Good, good. Okay, good, good. Waiting. Jamie, you good? The other Jamie's working on it. Mark's good. Donna, you good? Okay, good. Awesome. Okay, if you're done putting your scores in, click on the Programs tab and let's go back to the evaluation. So I got to scroll all the way down and notice that once I start editing a draft, it turns a different color. It goes to blue. It says, hey, so blue means I'm in draft. Green, I've never touched it, never created it. And white, finalized. Okay, so now I'm going to click on Edit Details to open that evaluation right back up. Everybody with me? Everybody's got it open? You good, Andy? You open your evaluation? You have your evaluation open? Okay, good. All right. So this is where Rebecca's going to get some questions, and I got a ton of them when we did this training, was they went to the test scores tab, they added a test, and then they went to go print it, and they went to this evaluation printout report, and they clicked on eval report, and nothing's there. Wait a minute, what happened to that test? I know I put it in there. Well, we actually have to tell it to go get those scores. So I have to go in the area in which I added that test. So I'm going to click on academic performance on my left navigation side to jump me to that section. So the first question says, were the educational assessments required for this evaluation? We answered yes. Then it says, is the assessment result contained in the diagnostic library? Did we put it in the library? Yes, we did. So I'm going to say, yes, it's in the library. Now it's going to say, all right, what assessment was it? And I think it was the A, right? I hope it was. Key A, and then who was the evaluator? Well, that was me. I'm the one that gave the kid. And I usually like to I always ask people to put their credentials there. That really does help a parent. Okay? Now I'm going to save it because I always like to save and save often. Okay? Now, hopefully, if I pick the right test, if I go to evaluation report, it brings in my test magically. So testers, click on the print preview and see that if your test results came in. Everybody good? Nope. Waiting? Okay. So there's a problem with this, isn't there? Should you just give scores to parents? Never. Never just give parents scores. So are we, everybody good with the scores? Did they all pull in? Kim, are you working with John on pulling them in?
No, he finalized his report.
Oh. Oh, he can just admin edit. That's okay. No biggie. Just admin edit. It's all right. Okay. So I don't want to just give scores to parents. So now I want to write my interpretation of the scores. So the way things print is whatever's first listed in your sections is what gets printed first. So I prefer having scores first, interpretation second. I like to line them up that way. Okay? So now I'm going to click on Add. Right after where I pulled those scores in, I'm going to click Add. They're going to ask you a question again. Now, what if you did multiple tests in the diagnostic library? You probably want to add it in, but you still want to stick your interpretations in between. So I'm doing an interpretation. Is my interpretation in the diagnostic library? No. So I would say no. Then it says, okay, what's the name of the assessment? I'm going to say interpretation of Key Math A. And I completed that on July 2nd. I'm really good. Okay. Then results of the assessment, these are my results. And then I can copy paste from my Word document or I can just type them in there. When you copy and paste, and you can copy and paste from a Word document only. Do not do it from a web page. If you're trying to do a web page, if you copy anything from a web-based, even if you're copying from Enrich itself, it'll come in as highlighted, green or yellow, and then you'll know it's been copy and pasted. It actually corrupts the file, and you've just messed up your file. It will actually block down on you and won't open up. So when I say copy and paste, you can copy and paste from your Word document, and then you always want to use the copy and paste that's like the letter A or the one that's the furthest. You know, you get like 3 different paste options. You want to use the paste option that cuts all formatting out. Not formatting like bullets and all that, but the background language that gets embedded in a Word doc, and you want to paste that in. So you can copy paste all you want as long as you're putting it in Word document. If you're pasting from something you copied, say for you high school people, you really want that great information from Naviance, and there's some awesome, great reports. You can copy all that stuff from Naviance from that web-based form and paste it into a Word doc, and then from that Word doc, take it and then put it in Enrich. Totally fine. But you can't take it straight from Naviance and bring it into Enrich because it'll corrupt the file. Is that good? Okay, everybody now have their diagnostic library and their non-diagnostic. Let's check it to make sure you do.
So I was supposed to do one of these?
Yeah, you should have one in your diagnostic and one interpretation. So if I click on Eval Report, I should see my key math scores, and underneath it, I should see my section that says interpretation, which I do. Pretty snazzy? Okay, so now there's one last section that's required. If I were to try and finalize this right now, it will yell at me. Okay? So if I say, oh, I'm done, yay, I put all my stuff in. Don't do this, I'm just showing it to you. But if I put in my stuff, and I'm going to say July 3rd, and I say evaluation completed, and I go to finalize, it's going to tell me, the system's smart enough to say, oh, no, 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 you're not done. You're required, you must have a summary. problems from, document information from a variety of sources. So anytime when you're going to finalize and you don't have a spot, the computer program's smart enough that it'll pick up and go, oh no. And if I close this, you'll see it'll actually be in red. So it tells me exactly where I need to go. So see where it says evaluation, that's red. And it's red here. So if I jump to the red spot, then I know what I have to fill out. So looking at the summary, a summary, if it's crafted correctly and appropriately, a summary should be a summary of all the assessments you gave. Okay? And it shouldn't be social emotional, blank, academic, blank. I don't want to see it chopped up that way. It should be a parent-friendly narrative that gives the parent basically a summary of what's happening with that student based on those assessments. If it's crafted beautifully, you can take this summary, copy and paste it into a Word document, and then take that Word document and paste it into your present level of educational performance, because it will have everything that you need if you do it right. Now, who's supposed to craft it? Depends on your team. My psychologist, who never liked to type any testing, was a beautiful wordsmith. So she usually did our summaries for us. So a lot of us put in our pieces, and then she crafted it into a really pretty and parent-friendly description of everything. A learning specialist does it. I don't know. It depends on your team. Okay? But you still have to have a summary. So we're just going to take the word text here and be done. What is our outcome date? I didn't check that on our... What's our outcome date? Is it the 19th for sure? 19, all right. And I know it's a Saturday. It's okay. You can make it the 18th. It won't kill us. Now, if the kid moves, and we have a lot of kids that move in between the evaluation, you would just select student move prior to evaluation, and then you're done. The kid moved, and then you end their special ed because they moved. But we're going to say evaluation completed and finalize. And hopefully I don't get deadlocked because everybody else is hitting finalize at the same time. And if you ever finalize something, you can always go back into admin edit. Yeah, I'm deadlocked. So I want to talk about that while I'm deadlocked. Up at the top, when you are in a finalized version, there's going to be two buttons at the top. There's an admin edit and there's a amend. What do you think is the difference between admin edit and amend?
Amend is fixed.
Okay, you're opposite.
Oh.
So admin edit is when you have a spelling error or a date error that you recognize that is not like impacting the IEP in such a way that it's going to get you to cohort, right? But if you just have a spelling thing or you selected something wrong in there that you needed to select or whatever, that's an admin edit. What admin edit does is it doesn't keep a record. You have just overrode what you had there. So you won't get that back ever. But on an amend is, and you can only amend an IEP. You can't amend any of these other forms, just the IEP. But when you amend an IEP or you amend something, you're keeping a record of those changes. So you can amend services as long as it's not changing the LRE and it's not huge. You can amend and add pieces or change the wording of a goal or change different pieces like that. I'd really be careful about the amendments, but amendment will give you a record. So you can go back and see what it was and see what it is now. That's what amending does. Admin edit, I go in and I make my change. I have no idea what that record was before. I have just overrode it. Okay, so that's the difference between amend and admin edit. Okay? So I'm going to try and finalize again. And if I don't get to finalize and you don't get to finalize, then we'll finalize it later on, which will be fine. Yay, I'm done. Okay, So it should open my programs tab back up. And if you notice, the evaluation says administrator approval. Does any of you say that? Do you see that little, like a little time capsule? I don't know what it is, a check mark. Okay? That means that Rebecca and I have homework tonight. I know, you guys don't. You're lucky. But Rebecca and I, tomorrow, will have to go through and we'll have to approve all of these to move you forward in the process, okay? So what we're going to do is we're just going to do what you did, and we're going to open up each one, and we're going to see whether or not you had the right 3 components that we did, and then we'll check you off for that little component on our checklist for homework for credit. And then we'll do that for all your other assignments as well, okay? So if you don't have this, you won't ever see this in production unless we do rolling audits for 15 plus IEPs. So if you ever see this, that means that, yay, you're the lucky one, gets your IEP audited. We might do rolling audits on regular IEPs too. You never know. So we'll turn on this approval on and off sometime during the school year. So you could be the randomly lucky one to get that. And then that you know that it's going to be an audit and you can't do anything with it. You can look at it all you want, but you can't move forward with it, amend it, or anything until we approve it, okay? And by the way, you want to either save or close. You never just want to sign out, because if you just go away from your page, then anything that you've done never gets saved. So just always say save and close, and you can always sign out. Tomorrow night, we'll finish this re-eval. We will go into the eligibility. We'll do the IEP. So I'll see everybody here tomorrow night at 4:30. Thank you so much for your attention. We did a lot.